equals the signal arrived on a Tuesday. Dr. Sarah Chen had been studying deep space signals at the Mauna Kea Observatory for 15 years, but she'd never seen anything like this. The pattern pulsed with mathematical precision, defying natural explanation. After triple-checking her instruments, she reached for her secure phone with trembling hands. "Director Matthews, you need to see this." Within hours, observatories worldwide confirmed the signal's existence. It originated from somewhere beyond the Kuiper Belt, transmitting in regular intervals that couldn't be anything but artificial. Humanity had just received its first definitive proof of intelligent alien life. The next 48 hours transformed Earth's scientific community into a frenzied hive of activity. Sarah barely slept, coordinating with colleagues across time zones as they worked to decode the message hidden within the signal's mathematical sequences. "It's not just random prime numbers," she explained to the hastily assembled panel of experts. Her holographic presentation showed cascading strings of data. "There's a pattern here that suggests..." She trailed off as new data streamed across her tablet. The signal had changed. In retrospect, humanity should have realized sooner that the initial signal was merely a courtesy knock. The real arrival came 3 days later, when massive objects appeared simultaneously in high orbit around Earth, Mars, and Venus. They simply materialized, as if space itself had parted to allow their passage. The vessels, if they could be called that, defied conventional description. Each one appeared as a shifting geometric pattern of impossible angles and curved surfaces that seemed to fold in on themselves. They were massive beyond comprehension, each roughly the size of Earth's moon. Global panic might have ensued if not for what happened next. Every screen on Earth, from smartphones to billboards, displayed the same message in perfect local language. "We are the archivists. We come to preserve." Sarah found herself suddenly at the center of humanity's first contact protocol, not because of any diplomatic qualification, but simply because she'd been the first to detect their herald signal. As she boarded the hypersonic transport to the United Nations, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything about this situation felt wrong. "The math doesn't add up," she muttered, reviewing the sensor data again. Her colleague, Dr. James Rodriguez, looked up from his own tablet. "Which part? The fact that they can apparently fold space like origami, or that they chose to announce themselves through every network device on Earth simultaneously?" "Neither. Look at the energy readings from their ships. They're not just big. They're impossibly efficient. No heat signature, no radiation, nothing. It's like they're not even there." The emergency UN session was already in progress when they arrived. Representatives from every nation crowded the chamber, their usual political divisions forgotten in the face of this unprecedented situation. Secretary General Amara Okoro stood at the podium, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "The archivists have requested a meeting with Earth's representatives. They've specified that they wish to speak with our scientists rather than our political leaders." A murmur ran through the assembly. Sarah felt her stomach drop as Okoro continued. "Dr. Chen, Dr. Rodriguez, please step forward." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of security briefings and hasty preparations. Sarah found herself standing in a specially constructed meeting room, heart pounding as reality shifted around her. The air shimmered, and suddenly they weren't alone. The archivist appeared as a floating collection of crystalline structures that somehow suggested a humanoid form without actually manifesting one. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Sarah's mind. "Your species stands at a crossroads." It began without preamble. "We have come to offer you a choice." James stepped forward. "A choice about what?" "Survival." The crystalline form shifted, and suddenly the room was filled with a three-dimensional projection of the galaxy. Vast sectors of space glowed with an ominous red tint. "What you call dark matter is not what you think it is. It is consuming your galaxy, converting normal matter into something else, something that cannot support life as you understand it." Sarah's scientific mind raced with implications. The missing mass problem, the acceleration of cosmic expansion. Yes, You are beginning to understand. We are not merely observers or explorers. We are preservers of life, gathering species and their knowledge before their regions of space become uninhabitable. How long? James asked, his voice barely a whisper. At current progression rates, this sector of space will be uninhabitable within 500 of your years. Sarah felt her world tilt on its axis. 500 years. Barely a moment in cosmic terms, but long enough that most humans wouldn't feel immediate panic. Long enough to plan, to adapt, to... Wait, she said, something clicking in her mind. You said you're preservers. You gather species before their regions become uninhabitable. But you're telling us this with centuries of warning. Why? The crystalline form seemed to pulse with something almost like approval. Because humanity is different. Your species possesses something we have rarely encountered in our millions of years of preservation. What's that? James asked. Potential. You see problems differently. You adapt in ways we cannot predict. While other species advance along predictable technological paths, you make creative leaps that defy conventional progression. The being's form shifted again, displaying images of human history, not our greatest technological achievements, but our adaptations. A primitive human using a cliff face to trap prey too large to confront directly. The first use of fire to make ineatable food edible. The invention of the wheel, the lever, the story. We are not here to simply preserve humanity, the archivist continued. We are here to propose an alliance. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she began to understand. You want us to help you fight back against the dark matter conversion. Yes. Your species sees patterns others miss. Find solutions where others see only obstacles. We offer you our knowledge, our technology, our protection. In return, we ask for your unique perspective on the greatest crisis our galaxy has ever faced. James let out a shaky breath. And if we refuse? Then we will offer to preserve a representative sample of your species and your knowledge, as we have done for countless others. The choice must be yours. Sarah looked at the galactic map still hovering in the air, at the creeping red tide of uninhabitable space. Then she thought about humanity's history, how every crisis, every obstacle, had pushed us to innovate, to adapt, to overcome. Before we decide, she said, I have questions about the nature of this dark matter conversion. We'll need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. The crystalline form shifted in what Sarah somehow knew was approval. You begin by seeking to understand the problem fully before proposing solutions. This is why we came to you first. Shall we proceed? Sarah glanced at James, saw her own mix of terror and excitement reflected in his eyes. Humanity had just been offered the ultimate challenge: help save the galaxy or retreat into preservation. She already knew what their answer would be. Yes, she said. Show us everything you know. The archivist's data center defied human comprehension. Sarah stood in what appeared to be an infinite void of swirling information, streams of light carrying billions of years of collected knowledge. She'd been aboard their vessel, if you could call a structure the size of Earth's moon a vessel, for what felt like hours, though time seemed to flow differently here. Your species understands only a fraction of what dark matter truly is. The archivist's thoughts resonated in her mind. Observe. The void transformed into a three-dimensional model of a dark matter particle cluster. But unlike the inert, invisible substance scientists have theorized about, this dark matter writhed with purpose. It moved like a living thing. It's not just matter, Sarah whispered, her scientific training warring with what her eyes were telling her. It's evolving. Correct, the archivist confirmed. What you call dark matter is a form of self-organizing complexity. It consumes normal matter and converts it into more of itself. We have watched it consume entire galaxies. James, floating nearby in the void, reached out to touch one of the information streams. Data cascaded around his fingers like water. But this violates everything we know about thermodynamics. The energy has to go somewhere. It does. The archivist's crystalline form shifted, revealing another layer of reality Sarah's mind could barely process. The converted matter enters what you might call the parallel dimensional state. Life as we know it cannot exist in that state. Sarah's mind raced with implications. That's why the universe's expansion is accelerating. We're not just seeing space expand. We're seeing our dimension lose mass to this conversion process. The void shifted again, showing the progression of the dark matter conversion across their galaxy. Entire sectors of space winked out of existence, converted into something human instruments couldn't even detect. The process was slow by human standards, but unstoppable by any known means. We have tried for millions of years to halt or reverse the conversion, the archivist continued. Our most advanced civilizations have failed, but your species, you think differently. What do you mean? James asked, though Sarah was beginning to understand. Show me your earliest attempts to achieve powered flight, the archivist requested. The void filled with images from Earth's history, the Wright brothers' first flight, but also Leonardo da Vinci's sketches, ancient Chinese kites, and countless failed attempts that seemed absurd by modern standards. Most species develop flight by methodically studying aerodynamics and gradually building more advanced machines, the archivist explained. Humans threw themselves off cliffs with wooden wings. You built impossible machines that should never have worked. Sometimes they didn't, but you kept trying new approaches that no logical species would consider. Because we didn't know it was impossible, Sarah said softly. Precisely. Your species' greatest strength is your ability to imagine solutions that defy conventional logic. You make intuitive leaps that our most advanced AI cannot replicate. The void shifted again, showing them something that made both scientists gasp. It was Earth, but not their Earth. This version was encased in what appeared to be a massive geometric structure that pulsed with energy. What is this? James asked. Our proposal. We offer to help humanity construct a planetary shield that will protect Earth from the conversion process. In return, we ask that you help us approach the dark matter problem with your unique perspective. Sarah frowned. Why not just give us the technology to escape? To move Earth to a safe region of space? Because there are no safe regions left, the archivist replied. The conversion is accelerating. We estimate that within 10,000 years, no normal matter will remain in this galaxy. We must find a solution, not merely delay the inevitable. A heavy silence fell over the void. Sarah looked at the streams of data surrounding them, representing millions of years of accumulated knowledge from thousands of civilizations. All that knowledge, and still no solution. We need to see everything, she said finally. Not just the data about the conversion process, but every failed attempt to stop it. Every crazy theory that was dismissed as impossible. And most importantly, we need to bring in more humans. Different kinds of thinkers. Scientists from other fields. The archivist asked. Not just scientists, James interjected, catching Sarah's train of thought. Artists, musicians, children, people who don't know what's supposed to be impossible. The human brain creates new neural pathways through random connections, Sarah explained. Sometimes the craziest ideas lead to breakthrough solutions. We need to approach this problem from angles that no one has tried before. The archivist's form pulsed with what might have been excitement. This is exactly why we came to Earth. While other species seek to perfect existing theories, you suggest completely abandoning conventional approaches. We'll need to set up a global network, Sarah continued, her mind racing with possibilities. Teams working on different aspects of the problem, but not organized by traditional scientific disciplines. We need to mix everything up. Quantum physicists working with marine biologists, astronomers collaborating with archaeologists. And we'll need to understand more about this parallel dimension, James added. The converted state of matter. Just because we can't live there doesn't mean we can't find a way to interact with it, maybe even reverse the process. The void around them shifted again, this time showing Earth's current state. Sarah could see the massive archivist vessels in orbit, already causing global upheaval just by their presence. Everything was about to change. There will be fear, the archivist warned. Resistance. Not all humans will accept this challenge. Sarah thought about the history of her species, how every major advance had been met with skepticism and fear, yet somehow humanity had always moved forward. We'll find a way to make them understand. We always do. Time is short, the archivist reminded them. Even with the planetary shield, we estimate only 1,000 years before the conversion reaches Earth's sector of space. 1,000 years. James smiled for the first time since the meeting began. You'd be amazed what humans can accomplish when we're running out of time. The void around them began to fade, reality seeping back in. As they prepared to return to Earth with their impossible news, Sarah felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Humanity had just been handed the ultimate puzzle, a challenge that had stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy. They were going to solve it or die trying. It was the human way. 3 months after the archivist's arrival, the global innovation network sprawled across Earth like a vast web of human creativity. Sarah stood in the central hub in Geneva, watching thousands of holographic connections spark between teams worldwide. They're calling it the biggest brainstorming session in human history, Maya Patel said, walking up beside her. The former street artist had become one of their most valuable team members, her ability to visualize complex patterns leading to several breakthrough insights. Any progress from the consciousness team? Sarah asked, gesturing to one cluster of connections where philosophers were working alongside quantum physicists. They're onto something interesting. Maya manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on their work. They think we've been looking at dark matter all wrong. We've been treating it like an enemy, a threat to be stopped. But what if it's more like an invitation? Before Sarah could respond, another voice cut in. You need to see this. James appeared through a holographic portal, his avatar showing the strain of too many sleepless nights. The kids in Singapore found something. The Singapore node was one of Sarah's favorite experiments. They'd given a group of children aged 8 to 12 access to simplified versions of the archivist's data, asking them to play with it like a video game. Their unrestrained imaginations had already produced several promising leads. The holographic display shifted, showing a crude but colorful animation created by a 9-year-old girl named Lynn. She'd drawn dark matter particles as friendly creatures trying to hug normal matter, only to accidentally destroy it because they didn't know their own strength. It's not just a cute drawing, James explained. Look at the pattern she used for the particle's movement. It's almost identical to the actual conversion process, but she intuited it without any advanced physics knowledge. Because she wasn't constrained by what she thought was possible, Maya nodded. Kids often see patterns that adults miss because our brains are too busy telling us what can't work. Sarah studied the drawing more closely. The child had depicted the dark matter creatures as lonely, seeking connection rather than destruction. It aligned eerily well with Maya's team's theory about the conversion process being an invitation rather than an attack. Get me the archivist, Sarah said suddenly. Within moments, the crystalline form materialized in their midst. You have made a discovery, the being asked. Maybe. We've been thinking about this all wrong. You said dark matter converts normal matter into something else, something that can't support life as we know it. But what if that's not quite accurate? What if it's trying to convert matter into something that can support a different kind of life? The archivist's form shifted in what they'd learned to recognize as intense interest. Explain. Look at the conversion pattern. Sarah pulled up multiple data streams, the child's drawing, Maya's consciousness studies, and the actual dark matter data. It's not random. It's not even efficient from a pure physics standpoint. But if you look at it as a form of communication, like a handshake protocol, James interjected, catching on. In computing, when two systems need to communicate, they first have to establish a compatible format. What if the conversion process is just an incredibly inefficient first attempt at communication? The archivist's form pulsed with energy. In millions of years of study, No species has proposed this interpretation. Because you were all too advanced, Maya said softly. Too logical. You saw the destruction and looked for ways to stop it. It took a child's drawing to make us see the pattern for what it really is. Loneliness seeking connection. The next few hours were a blur of activity as teams worldwide pivoted to explore this new perspective. The archivists shared data they had previously considered irrelevant, subtle patterns in the conversion process that might be attempts at communication, variations that could be early signs of adaptation. In Antarctica, a team of linguists and microbiologists made another breakthrough. They'd been studying how bacteria communicate through chemical signals, looking for parallels with the dark matter conversion process. Their data suggested that what looked like destruction might actually be an attempt at symbiosis gone wrong. Like when European explorers first encountered native peoples, one linguist explained, their attempts at communication often led to unintended destruction, not out of malice, but from a fundamental inability to understand each other's existence. Sarah found herself back in the archivist's data center, but this time she wasn't alone. The void was filled with holographic avatars of humans from every field. Scientists, artists, philosophers, children, all contributing their unique perspectives to understanding the problem. We need to stop trying to prevent the conversion, Sarah announced to the assembled crowd. Instead, we need to learn how to talk back. Talk back to dark matter. Someone scoffed. How do you communicate with something that operates on completely different physical laws? The same way humans have always communicated across seemingly impossible barriers, Maya replied. We start with the basics. We look for patterns. We try things that probably won't work. We learn from our failures. And most importantly, we don't assume that different means hostile. The archivist's form seemed to expand, encompassing the entire void. You propose to establish communication with a force that has consumed countless civilizations. The risk is enormous. The risk of not trying is even bigger, Sarah countered. If we're right, if this really is an attempt at communication, then every failed effort to stop the conversion has just been making the problem worse. Like swatting away a hand reached out in friendship. James stepped forward, his avatar glowing with intensity. We'll need to develop completely new forms of technology, ways to generate controlled conversion events that we can use to test communication patterns. And we'll need to do it fast, Maya added. The conversion is still spreading. We need to learn this new language before it reaches us. The void filled with murmurs of both excitement and fear. What they were proposing was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. But as Sarah looked around at the assembled avatars, she saw something powerful. Hope. Humans had taken an impossible problem and found a new way to look at it. Now they just had to prove their theory before the galaxy ran out of time. The experimental chamber beneath the Atacama Desert looked like something from a fever dream. Massive crystalline structures, gifts from the archivists, formed a complex geometric pattern around a central sphere of pure energy. This was humanity's first attempt at controlled communication with dark matter, and tension filled the air like static electricity. Translation matrix online, Maya announced, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. Pattern recognition algorithms are ready. Sarah stood at the main control station, surrounded by screens showing data from 1,000 different sensors. The archivist floated nearby, its crystalline form pulsing with what she learned to recognize as anxiety. You understand the risks, it said, not for the first time. If your theory is wrong, you'll trigger a conversion event that could consume this entire facility. That's why we're a kilometer underground in the middle of nowhere, James replied from his station. If this goes wrong, the damage will be contained. Sarah took a deep breath. After 6 months of preparation, endless simulations, and countless theoretical models, they were ready to attempt actual contact. Their idea was both elegant and terrifying. They would deliberately trigger a small dark matter conversion event, but instead of trying to stop it, they would attempt to modulate it with patterns they believed represented basic communication. "Final checks complete," Maya reported. "Ready to initiate on your mark." Sarah looked around the chamber one last time. Dozens of the world's brightest minds were present, along with representatives from the archivists. If they were wrong, if this was truly just a mindless cosmic force consuming the galaxy, they were about to learn it the hard way. "Begin primary sequence," she ordered. The crystalline structures began to hum, their resonance building to a pitch that made teeth ache. In the center of the chamber, the energy sphere pulsed with increasing intensity. "Quantum fluctuations detected," James called out. Dark matter particles responding to the beacon. On the main screen, Sarah watched as their sensors detected the first signs of conversion. Normally, this would be the moment to shut everything down, to prevent the process from spreading. Instead, they did something no one had ever tried before. "Initiating communication sequence," Maya announced. Her hands moved in complex patterns, directing the crystalline structures to emit specific energy patterns. They were starting with the most basic concept they could think of: rhythm. A simple, repeating pattern that said, "We are here. We are trying to talk to you." For several tense seconds, nothing happened. The conversion process continued as it always had, consuming normal matter at its usual rate. Then something changed. "Look at this," James shouted, pointing to his readings. "The conversion rate is fluctuating. It's matching our pattern." Sarah leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. The dark matter wasn't just consuming anymore, it was responding. The pattern of conversion was shifting, mimicking the rhythm they were sending but with subtle variations. It's like it's learning our language," Maya whispered. The archivist's form flickered with intense emotion. "In millions of years of observation, we have never seen the conversion process alter its behavior like this." Sarah felt her heart racing. "Maya, start the second sequence. Let's see if it can learn more complex patterns." The crystalline structures shifted tone, now emitting a more complicated series of pulses. Again, they watched as the dark matter conversion process seemed to pause, then began to change its behavior to match. "It's not just mimicking," James realized, studying the data. "Look at these variations. It's introducing new elements to the pattern, like it's trying to teach us something back." "Can we decode it?" Sarah asked. Maya's fingers flew across her controls. "The AI is working on it, but it's unlike any form of communication we've ever encountered. It's not just exchanging information, it's exchanging states of being." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber. The dark matter conversion was accelerating, spreading beyond their carefully controlled test area. "Containment field failing," someone shouted. "Don't shut it down," Sarah ordered, even as others moved to terminate the experiment. "Look at the pattern." On the main screen, the spreading conversion formed intricate geometric shapes, similar to the archivist's crystalline technology, but impossibly more complex. It wasn't consuming the chamber anymore, it was transforming it. "This is unprecedented," the archivist declared, its form shifting rapidly with excitement or fear. Sarah couldn't tell which. The conversion process has never demonstrated this level of controlled transformation. The chamber walls began to shimmer with an otherworldly light as the transformation spread. But instead of destroying the matter it touched, the dark matter was creating something new. Structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "It's building something," Maya breathed. "No, it's showing us something." The transformed section of the chamber had become a window into another reality. Through it, they could see shapes and patterns that human eyes were never meant to process. But instead of being hostile or alien, it felt welcoming. "All this time," Sarah said softly, "they weren't trying to destroy us. They were trying to show us their world. Every civilization they encountered, they were reaching out, trying to share something incredible with us. But nobody understood until now." The archivist's form pulsed with revelation. "Because no species before has ever tried to simply Talk back. They all saw the conversion as a threat to be stopped, never as an invitation to be accepted. James studied his readings with growing excitement. The dark matter isn't just responding to us. It's adapting its entire conversion process to be more compatible with our form of matter. It's learning how to touch us without destroying us. But why now? Maya asked. Why did it work for us when it failed for so many others? Sarah thought about the child's drawing that had started them down this path. The simple idea that sometimes destruction comes not from malice, but from an inability to properly connect. Because we were willing to be wrong, she said. Every other civilization tried to solve this with pure logic, with advanced technology. We approached it with imagination, with empathy. We saw loneliness where others saw only threat. The transformed section of the chamber continued to grow, but now it was stable, controlled. Through their instruments, they could detect complex patterns of information flowing both ways across the boundary between realities. We need to show this to everyone, James said urgently. The whole world needs to understand what we've discovered. Sarah nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead to the implications. They hadn't just solved the dark matter problem. They'd opened a door to something far more extraordinary. Humanity was about to take its first steps into a larger universe, one where the very laws of physics were more flexible than anyone had imagined. And they'd done it not through superior technology or advanced science, but through their uniquely human ability to reach out and try to understand the unknown. 1 year after the breakthrough in the Atacama Desert, Earth had become the center of the greatest transformation in galactic history. The once threatening dark matter conversion had been transformed into something entirely new, a bridge between realities. Sarah stood in the new global communication hub in Nipple, watching as representatives from 1,000 worlds gathered to witness humanity's latest achievement. The massive chamber, built with a combination of archivist technology and human innovation, hummed with energy as beings from across the galaxy prepared for another exchange with the dark matter entities, or the resonance, as they had come to be known. Ready for the demonstration? Maya asked, approaching with a holographic display showing the latest communication protocols. She'd evolved from artist to xenolinguist, pioneering new ways to translate between normal matter consciousness and the resonance multidimensional thoughts. Almost, Sarah replied, studying the gathered crowd. Among the familiar crystalline forms of the archivists, she could see representatives from dozens of species that had once fled from the dark matter conversion. Now they had returned, drawn by humanity's impossible achievement. James joined them, his face lit with excitement. The latest translations are coming through. The resonants have shared something incredible. They've been trying to reach out to physical matter species for billions of years. Every time they made contact, civilizations either fled or tried to fight back. They couldn't understand why no one would answer their call. Imagine being that lonely, Maya mused, existing in a state of reality so different from ours that every attempt at connection resulted in accidental destruction. Until now. The chamber darkened as the demonstration began. In the center of the room, a controlled conversion zone shimmered into existence. But unlike the destructive events of the past, this was a stable gateway between realities. Through it, patterns of light and energy danced in impossible geometries, the resonance equivalent of a welcoming ceremony. Distinguished guests, Sarah addressed the assembled crowd. Her words automatically translated into dozens of languages and forms of communication. What you're about to witness isn't just a demonstration of interaction between matter states. It's proof that the greatest barriers in our universe aren't physical. They're perceptual. The gateway pulsed with new patterns as she spoke, the resonants adding their own commentary to her words. Thanks to the new translation protocols, everyone in the chamber could understand the overlapping messages, a harmony of thought between two fundamentally different forms of existence. For eons, we saw the conversion of matter as a threat to life itself, she continued. But we were wrong. It wasn't destruction we were seeing. It was an attempt at evolution. The resonants weren't trying to end our existence. They were inviting us to expand it. On cue, Maya activated the next phase of the demonstration. The gateway expanded, but instead of consuming the matter around it, it transformed it. The air itself seemed to crystallize into structures that existed in both states simultaneously, proof that physical matter and dark matter could coexist in a stable form. Humanity's greatest gift, the archivists' thoughts resonated through the chamber, was not their technology or their science. It was their ability to imagine possibilities that more advanced civilizations had dismissed as impossible. They looked at the greatest threat our galaxy had ever faced and saw not an enemy, but a potential friend reaching out across a cosmic divide. James stepped forward, directing everyone's attention to the new data streaming across the chamber walls. The resonances exist in dimensions we're only beginning to understand. Their reality interpenetrates ours like layers of a cosmic onion. What we thought was the end of our universe is actually just the beginning of a much larger one. The demonstration reached its climax as several volunteers, human and alien alike, stepped into the gateway zone. Instead of being converted or destroyed, they were transformed. Their consciousness expanded to perceive both states of reality simultaneously. After a few moments, they stepped back, forever changed by the experience. "This is just the beginning," Sarah announced to the awestruck crowd. "The resonances have shown us ways to stabilize these gateways across the galaxy. Instead of fleeing from the conversion, we can work with it, guide it, use it to expand our understanding of existence itself." But more importantly, Maya added, "We've proven that communication is possible across any barrier, if we're willing to approach it with an open mind and heart. The very force we thought would end all life in our galaxy has instead opened the door to forms of life we never imagined possible." The chamber erupted in a cascade of responses, emotional, energetic, and multidimensional. Species that had been enemies now found themselves united in wonder. The archivists, who had spent millions of years preserving life from what they thought was inevitable destruction, were now at the forefront of facilitating a new kind of existence.